Welcome to Sex Confidential, a new podcast that is going in search of the cutting edge of sex today. I'm Sophie Cohen, and I'll be your host, taking you traveling through transformative sexual experiences that everyone can enjoy and hopefully relate and learn from. So without further ado, I bring you today's next Sex Confidential guest. So today on Sex Confidential, I am joined by the wonderful Nick McGuire from the Marquis de Mayfair. And you are the Marquis de Mayfair. So I would love, why don't you give us a little intro? What is the Marquis de Mayfair?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all.
It's a pleasure.
Wonderful. The Marquis de Mayfair, well, it wasn't due to be an alter ego, but often these things are. The Marquis de Mayfair is actually a luxury goods brand designed to bring luxury to our intimacy and play. But it is very much based out of my own passion. So weirdly, the two things have conjoined. So my personal life and story and passion for king and for personal development and for luxury and style has really merged with my entrepreneurial appetite, a market gap opportunity. And so earlier this summer, Marquis de Mayfair was launched right here. Center of London.
And he was born. So, obviously I've read up a little bit about you, done my homework. So you were a pastor, and that is quite an interesting place to start. So your journey from pastor to master, shall we say, is quite a transformation. How did your experience as a pastor influence your work in BDSM and maybe even the creation of the Marquis de Mayfair?
Wow. Yeah. So that's totally true. Weirdly, I had a strange juxtaposition in my youth. Not only did I become a Christian at 17 and saw the light and really passionately went for it throughout all my 20s and 30s, meaning by the time I was 25, I was running a church, married, with kids, another one on the way, like living the nuclear family Christian life. And in parallel, I was also in the tech sector, and it was, show my age, the .com boom. And so really, from these humble origins, I was thrust into a life of opulence, success, traveling the world. I discovered from a small town in the northwest of England where I was pastoring things like Armani jeans. And, I was just thrust into a totally different lifestyle. And those two things were a very strange journey from the sort of humble origins and the need to be around, people of, poor, people that were struggling, helping them in church, being a pastor, working through their life problems and really supporting people. And on the other hand, flying off to San Jose, going to a huge sales conference, having people like Aerosmith playing our gigs for us and just making so much money because of the .com boom. It was a crazy position. So
that's really quite a juxtaposition to be in.
Yeah, sort of luxury and giving to the poor. It's kind of like there's this constant battle between, does God really want you to be rich, and all this kind of strange stuff that really the church and Christianity had. And what happened was, in my early 30s, I started reading and really passionately trying to defend my position in faith by reading things like Darren Brown and Richard Dawkins. And it took about 2 weeks before everything that I started to have believed since the age of 17 was slowly starting to be undone through, logic, argument, and things like hypnosis and open cold reading and things like that. So I went down a rabbit hole of thinking, God, is the stuff I'm doing in church really replicable by, open reading and like say a hypnosis. And so I started to really explore that stuff and realized that actually, sadly, a lot of what I was seeing in the church, I could also replicate. And one fateful night I went to, when I was my faith was really struggling, I went to Shrewsbury, of all places, with a friend, and we were in a bar, and this big group of girls that were on a hen night came up to us, and they were like, we were going to have a short with a short guy and dance with a tall guy, and they were playing some sort of bingo game. And I said, look, I can't do any of that. And out of all the books that I'd just been reading about, hypnosis and magic and all that kind of stuff, I thought, no, rather than doing anything silly, I'll do a cold reading on you. I'll do a palm reading. So having never done this in my life and only been involved in the church, I took these girls one by one, and from the back of the book, I was quoting what they told me to say when you were doing this sort of thing. And one by one, they're going, oh my God, how did you know? How did you know? And then the final girl came, and I did this reading on her, running out of material, and she burst into tears and ran away. And I went outside for a smoke thinking, God, what have I just done here? This is crazy. And she came back and she took me to one side and she said, nobody ever knew that I'd been abused until you said those things you just said. And I'm like, whoa.
What did I say?
She's like, I just made it up. Right. And so I realized then that a lot of that sort of reaction of people coming forward and sharing their pain, and they wanted a place to do it, I'd seen in the church too. And I'd seen people coming forward for prayer, and, you know, God was fixing it. And I would just made this stuff up, and I'd seen the same process. So really that undid my faith. And very quickly, having moved out, everything pretty much went. So my faith, ultimately my marriage, because it was based on the fact that it was a Christian marriage. And I really descended into I call it my gap decade. I really descended into sex, drugs, and rock and roll because I hadn't done it. I've been a Christian, right? So I had a lot of...
I mean, take it from a Jew. It's what Jesus would have wanted.
And of all the places to do sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I did it in the centre of Manchester, which is like the party city. So, you know, I discovered everything, including kink, and everything that had been sort of built up and suppressed through religion and sexuality, my sexuality, exploded in a crazy hedonistic time. And even though now I'm happily 17 months sober, and, you know, I'm living in the centre of London, lots of the craziness went, the partying, the excess, but the kink remained.
Well, that's really interesting that you say that. I sort of always feel that people who gravitate generally towards lots of things, anything kind of organized, but especially with kink, tend to be where I would kind of place them as type A personalities, people who enjoy maybe extremes in different arenas of their life, whether that be with sports or maybe at one point in their life they partook in some partying, which I absolutely did myself as well. And that when, you know, those things that maybe are a little bit more destructive to your life go, what do you replace them with? How do you sort of get this feeling and this sense of being able to release and let go? And I think a big confusion around BDSM can often be that this is just about pain, or just like only crazy people do it and things like this. Not that either of us have very much helped that stigma currently at the moment, but I've met tons of people who explore different ways of being involved in BDSM and kink, and it really is just a way to escape their life in a different kind of way, be able to let go, set themselves free from certain things. And I think that's also kind of what people look for in religion a little bit as well, is to have somewhere that you feel safe and held, and that's very far away from sexuality. But, you know, as people and as human beings, we're always striving to feel connected to something, to feel that we're part of something bigger. And, you know, certain things, you know, kink I quite enjoy because it is so free, and you can really find your own space in that. Organized religion or, you know, things in those spaces, you kind of really have to conform to what is being spoken to you and told. And it's a much more paternalistic viewpoint of the world, and really protecting this nucleus of, you know, family, children, all this type of stuff. And if you don't fit into that box, it could be quite a lonely place to be.
Yes, I think that's really true, and I started to see that. So, like, when I was in my early teens, I kind of went down the heavy metal rock music. It was the 80s; it was good music, right? So, I've still got a penchant for, you know, putting on some eyeliner and glam rocking it up. But I noticed that was like a sub community, and what you saw there was a lot of people that didn't integrate into the mainstream. And so, in that sort of alternative rock and goth sort of sector that was developing, I found a lot of people there that just didn't fit in with society. Similarly with the church, but a different group.
Absolutely.
And so what was very surprising to me, as you've just eloquently put, was that the kink community which has developed is also people that sort of haven't traditionally integrated fully into society. And actually, that's one of the things that Marquis de Mayfair, I hope we perhaps can come to, but I want to do. But what I noticed, just to sort of tie those strands together, is when I started first experiencing BDSM, just out of relationships. But I've been to a couple of clubs and things in Manchester, and I met a girl that who was a sub, and she, rather than I'd sort of switched around in my own relationships as I was developing, but she purely came to me because she was looking for somebody to dom her. She was a sub. And so I played around a couple of times, and then again one evening she came to my place, and we were playing, and nothing too crazy, just a little bit of light restraint and some impact, and she just burst into tears, and I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And I'm trying to find out what's the matter, and literally what we'd done is unlock some trauma that had basically come from a very terrible relationship that she was in. It triggered it, and for the rest of that evening, I spent the time holding her as she wept, as she was letting out pain and stuff that she'd done. Now, I'm certainly not a psychologist or a counselor, but one of the things that I think we all have to be aware of is if we're moving into relationships, whether they're BDSM relationships or whether they're actual, romantic relationships, we may not be qualified to be counselors, but more often than not, we're the person that the person in distress is going to go to, and we do have to have some level of competency, self-awareness, kindness, love, and direction to point people in, certainly if it becomes a medical or a more serious mental health matter. But what I found with her was we started to develop something where I realized that there was a pastoral type relationship, maybe even a paternal type relationship, that because I was able to be dominant and yet create a place of safety, was somewhere where she was able to release those emotions. And so what I realized quite early on in my kink journey was there were a lot of parallels for people that have been sort of had their own stuff, like say it could be creativity, but sometimes it can be traumatic, and they come to areas like kink and they're looking for relationships that might give them the power dynamic they're looking for, the structure they're looking for. And so I felt a real kindred connection with kink, probably because of my background, because of what I'd read about how people can be manipulated and how they need structure. And so I started to really invest in my dom-sub relationships. I called her S1 because she was the first. In fact, she was we were still very close now, 10 years on. She even got a tattoo of the number 1 on her neck. I always say it's the one that got away now. That's because we've moved on. But
you never know if it come back around, if she's listening now.
Yeah, she probably will. And she's great. She's great. And she's been on such a healing journey. Now her life is blossomed. And I'm not saying that was because of me. It wasn't.
It's part of it.
It's
part of the fabric of it. And something I say to people a lot is I think that people will assume that anybody who is seeking out to be a dominant in a role of being in domination, it has quite a negative connotation that follows that word, domineering, things like that are not looked at in necessarily positive ways outside of the kink space. But, one of the big things that I always say to people is if you want to be the person who is dominating in that space, the dominant, the master, dominatrix, whatever you want to look at, the number one thing you have to have is empathy and a care of other people. If you do not have that, then that's where that goes over to abuse, and it turns into something that is not pleasant for anyone. And, the number one thing is that you have a desire and an interest to help somebody feel something or come into a space that makes them feel alive or makes them be able to touch in with something, makes them be able to let go sexually. It's so many layers of things. Yes. And this assumption that, yes, it's just people who are dominant. And of course, there's bad actors in everywhere that you look, and so, but for the most part, and then I think on the flip side of that, people often look at submissive as a negative, reductive word about somebody. Well, to be somebody who is brave enough and strong enough to put themselves in a position that is highly uncomfortable, or might be something that's really pushing a boundary that they never thought they would be able to push, or being emotionally open with somebody, being submissive doesn't have to be physical. It can just be a mental, or it can also be things like forced orgasm, where it's like, that sounds nice. It's not a necessarily a negative thing, but you have to be quite a strong individual to put yourself up for that. And so all these sort of assumptions get made about words and people who do certain things. And I have to say, I've never met a more badass person than a true submissive. And I've never met a nicer softie than a dominant.
So well put. And I completely agree with you. In fact, it was really this of becoming, because I was quite switchy and playing around, and, as I sort of developed more and more into the dom side, exactly what you're talking about was I have like, I kept naming the ones that were real relationships. So I'm up to S9 now, and every single one of them has been a really valuable part of my life, and we've impacted with each other. But I'd started to realize that as a dom, I was, from a male dom perspective, doming mainly women, I was adopting this, I'm the roles of like the headmaster, the leader, the father, the caregiver, the protector, the discipliner. And as I started to recognize those things, these are traditional masculine characteristics. And actually, I think for a lot of men, when you get to really put yourself into this position where you're taking absolute care of somebody, potentially, their life in your hands, and you're having to create boundaries and safe words and reassurance and aftercare, and yet you still have the ability to be a sexual predator and to be strong and dominant. When you take both of those things, they really mold and they're almost like seasoning for masculinity. And I believe that as we sort of go down that and communicate about that, we can actually give ourselves much more confidence. And when I inhabit him, when I become sir or whoever I am to that person, I found that the days afterwards, I feel more capable. I have more agency. I feel like I'm not weak. I feel much more confident because in the world we've created, I am the law. Obviously we understand that the submissive has the power, but they enable me to inhabit this role, this masculinity, which spills out into the everyday, and I think is incredible.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you say that, because I'm also, I would say I'm pretty switchy as a person, and have worked as a pro dom and have been in, there's nothing I've done to somebody else that I haven't had done to me at some point. But I do always sort of feel that whenever I have pushed the boundaries of what I'm able to do sexually as a woman, I feel super empowered after. I feel like, God, my body's amazing. I can do all this amazing stuff. And so it is something that sort of follows you around. And I think sexuality is often, well, you will very know yourself, because coming from a place that was really in the centerfold of purity culture, and sort of really looking at sexuality as just about procreation and connecting, husband and wife, but really not about finding who you are as a person. And so often people feel embarrassed, they feel ashamed, they are worried that they don't smell good, look good, all this kind of stuff that goes with this. And I think that, in kink spaces as well, because you have often things that are abnormal, whatever that means, fetishized and celebrated. And you see all different types of bodies and people and sexualities. And so it creates a space where you can really feel that you belong somewhere. And I have seen time and time again that when you help somebody see themselves for their full sexual self, it is the most enlightening, beautiful feeling that you can possibly have, because it's really the true essence of you, at your most open. And that somebody has said, this is beautiful and this is great. And so many people have not had that experience. And so to be able to walk into something and have that, it is a healing type thing. It is a confidence builder. I'm kind of like, I like to fuck because I like to fuck, so I don't want to make everything woo-woo and about like therapy. But there are things that come underneath it that make you feel, that did not mean to say come underneath it. That sounds very rude. But, that lift you up in different aspects of that as well. So it's very interesting to hear a male perspective on that feels quite similar. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about the Marquis de Mayfair. So something that you also talk about is, and I really love this quote from you, which was, style shouldn't end when we undress, which I totally agree with. I mean, I recommend to people all the time, like, if you got ugly underwear, throw it away. You can get comfortable, beautiful underwear, and so this really extends to this. So what does this philosophy mean to you personally, and how does it shape the brand?
Perfect. Thank you. Well, you're right. Even when the underwear comes off, styles shouldn't end. And I think that, particularly in the world we inhabit, that really means the quality of materials. It started back as this. My journey continued, and for 10, 15 years, I, like everybody, I think, I wouldn't mind a paddle, or I wouldn't mind a flogger. And you sort of shop around, and then, you maybe get a bit tight and you see a sale on, Bondara or something, and you buy something for $10 and it breaks. And I basically had a collection of crap that, and I found that I was coming home and, where maybe I'm with somebody and we're going to start a scene, or we're going to play. And I'm rummaging around in what was basically an old diving case from when I learned to scuba dive. And I'm pulling shibari rope off a crop, off a pinwheel, because I'm looking for a pair of clamps that I can't find. And I'm like, this is not sexy. I'm spending most of my time unraveling stuff, complaining about why do magic wands have 20 speeds when we all just want the one, right? And I'm rotating through at night. And it's just an unsexy experience. So I really started to go on a journey to investigate. Okay, I'm sick of this bag. I'm sick of rummaging around in a sock drawer at 3 a.m. for a vibrator. I want something to elevate this whole process. I mean, I'm not a pro, I want to just do it at my home. So I searched, forever, Etsy, eBay, websites, dark web, anything. I want to find a cabinet or a case that isn't a professional dungeon equipment, but is something luxurious that would fit in with my, Marleybone home, something really nice. So I searched and searched and searched, and eventually I found the Sade trunk that you can see glowing behind me.
I can. I mean, it's so glittery and beautiful. It makes you want to climb in.
Thank you so much. And I had to ship it from California, and the shipping cost as much as the trunk did. So
I would assume so.
And when I got there, and I had one item, I got one crop that I also saw that I loved with a like a gold head on it, and I had one item in my unfinished case, and I thought, this is a great business, because now I don't want to put crappy stuff that I've had for 10 years in my case. I want to buy a new set. I thought, wow, this is a really good business now I think about it. So I sought down the manufacturer, found out that everything was designed in Italy, but actually being manufactured in the Far East. And they were a great brand, up-and-coming brand called Upco. They'd already been featured on How to Build a Sex Room on Netflix.
Such a great show. It's so fun.
Yeah, great fun, right?
I feel like I really want to do the build on from that, which is how to use a sex room. So Netflix, get Nick and I on. We'll show you. We'll show you how to use a sex room.
Workshops, and you are excellent at doing that.
Thank you very much.
We'll have to I'll supply the kit. You do the pitch.
Perfect.
So basically, I contacted the manufacturer and said, "There's no one doing this in the UK. But I'm not just going to buy some stuff. I want exclusivity." And we can do exclusivity, but you're going to have to give us some commitments on stock value and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay. And at the same time, my now business partner, but very good friend of mine, super successful guy, Aaron Meller. He has luxurious nightclubs, restaurants all over the world and all over the UK. He has about 40 venues here in the UK, about 19 to 20 worldwide, including New York and LA and Ibiza. And we've been great friends for a long time. And he was opening a place in Mayfair. And so I bought this case. He had this luxury place in Mayfair. I saw this as being a great business, and I thought, hang on.
It's meant to happen.
Yeah. And this was off Bond Street, between Bond Street and Savile Row. And I'm like, okay, you can't get a better place for luxury than that. So I told him, I pitched him, I said I got the kit, I've got exclusivity, and I went back to the guys and said, look, how about exclusivity? If I buy a load of stock and I launch you in Mayfair off Bond Street? And they're like, okay. So basically, so I created Marquis de Mayfair, put the exclusivity contract in for what is our first collection, which is the Upco collection. We put that into Aaron's venue in the center of Mayfair as a pop-up. That was only for the beginning, and now we've moved to another location, which actually just off Green Park Tube Station, past the Ritz, past Fortnum and Rayson, and we're there on Piccadilly, just off Jermyn Street, of course, which is also synonymous with fashion and bespoke design.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, so that's where our new showroom is. So basically, that in a nutshell is it. We've created what I would like to say is the first luxury brand that treats, in a post 50 Shades of Grey world, treats consumers as if people that want to explore kink, but shouldn't have to go through the pain that I did, which is of just having bits of non-matching materials in crap cases, in sock drawers, but to actually invest into your play equipment. So when I open this case and the combination locks flick and the doors open, then suddenly I feel elevated. And I think that's the thing that luxury does that other things can't. You know, when you sell your first business, you buy yourself a Rolex, not to tell the time, right? But to show that you've been successful. And
Absolutely.
I remember when I first started making money back in the day, and I had a crap, banged out old car, and I drove it around the corner from a car dealership. I wouldn't even park outside the car dealership because my car was so bad. And I walked into this garage that had these luxurious cars, and the dealer must have seen me coming, and he's like, "Would you like to sit in this Porsche? Normally I wouldn't let you, but you can." And
Yes, I would.
opened the door and I sat down into this Porsche, and I put my hands on the steering wheel, and I just felt the exuberance of luxury and power. And that elevation should exist when we play. That elevation should exist when somebody is stood in front of you and you're initiating a DS relationship. So I found that by investing in luxury items, actually creating the scene, what's happening is we are all elevated. And when I place one of my black label props in somebody's hand, you can see they have the same sensation as when I held the Porsche steering wheel.
Absolutely. And,
it's clean leather, it's luxurious.
it feels good, and also, taking this onto something else, I often will say to people, like, when you're first investing in sex toys, I think actually it's quite good to go the Bondera route and, just see if you like it. Is this a sensation you enjoy? Don't invest heavily, especially, a lot of sex toys are very expensive. So, you can spend a lot of money very quickly. So I'm always saying to people, just try out sensations, try out new sensations. But once you sort of work out, yes, I like that sensation, or you can kind of work backwards, like if you're going to like a suction toy for clitoral stimulation, well, do you like when somebody does that to you with their tongue? Do you wish they could go on forever? Then that might be a good thing to invest in. But get high quality things. Your genitals are like, have the most blood flow and, thinnest skin on your body, and they really take in toxins. So it's really important that you're not inserting things inside yourself that are made out of crap. And if you wouldn't put it in your mouth, you certainly shouldn't put it up yourself.
Nice.
And when you're sort of using all these, when we did the workshop last year, you were kind enough to lend me all of your beautiful equipment, and it feels beautiful in your hands. It feels good, just like being a beautiful lingerie feels good. And this idea that everything needs to be sort of cheap and dirty when you're exploring in sex, it's like, well, if you want to go to a nice restaurant, if she's wearing a beautiful dress and beautiful high heels and the whole thing, and then you're getting out like bargain basement vibrator, why? Why would you do that? So, if it is affordable to you, it's something that you have access to, try and get the nicest thing that you can. Less is more. I can get away with just a very small amount of equipment and tools without needing very much. So get good quality ones, and you never have to replace them, because if you have to buy them again and again, they sit in Chinese landfills or landfills that we send off to other places in the world, and it's not necessary. So we can make these, investments in ourselves, investments in pieces that are lifelong pieces, not crap you replace again and again. So
I love that. Yeah, sorry. I think the lifelong is a really good point, because one of the things that I realized I could do is not only do we get this collection in, but when we were starting to do events, and obviously we've been to your training events and we're going to do some throughout the new year, is when we sit down with people, we ask them exactly what you're saying. Do you like impact? Did you like sensory? What did you like from our demonstration? And then we curate the items for them. And then for the lifelong, we can then personalize these items. So not only can we put them in cases, but we can put your initials on, your crests, logo. And so what I want this to be is something that you invest in. It's not quite like you pass it down to the next generation, perhaps.
Maybe not. But although if my mom had some like cool whips and things like that, I'd be taking them. And my aunt was a real equestrian, horsey rider.
Oh,
and
I've seen you've got some beautiful.
I'll be taking the vintage stuff, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's actually, I want to talk a little bit more about this personalization idea, because you actually have created this bespoke shopping experience, which I think is incredibly unique. It's something that I'm very excited that something like this exists, because obviously I consult with loads of clients. I'm the kink concierge for the Mandrake Hotel. And so I like to create these really beautiful experiences for people to explore eroticism in a way that doesn't feel seedy or embarrassing, or that doesn't feel luxury. So you've really done this now. So talk to us a little bit more about this and how you're going to do that. What can I expect?
Immersive experiential shopping. Yeah. So we basically, our showroom that we have in Piccadilly, so in Mayfair, we have a room, a red room, literally, with paneled walls and oak casing. And we have 2 Chesterfield suites there. So what will happen is you come in, this is for a private consultation, and I will have a model with me, and we will talk through how different positions can be attained, what sort of play you want, and we'll do you a full consultation. And then we have all the equipment there, and either we'll use it on the model or you can handle the items yourself. And we'll give some level of how to do, for instance, a spreader bar and the different things you can do with the spreader bar. And
for people who don't know what a spreader bar is, this is something that you can attach at your ankles. It has a little bar in between, and it means it holds them open for forced fun.
Here you are. Yes, okay. Wonderful item. And
carry on.
This is nicely Italian leather as well. So we will do different demonstrations, different positions, and then we will spend time with you, and we'll curate, as I say, which items you like. Then, depending on budget and what you're looking to do, we can either provide those items. We have our off-the-shelf collection, which is Upco, or we will take and we will create bespoke items and jewelry. So, for instance, for some of our professional clients in the female domination, we're creating different items with their signature on there. So that might be impact toys. For their heels, we have a new stamp that you can use, like a signet. So you can actually, if you're doing trampling or standing on wax, you can actually leave your initials on the body or on the wax. So we have artisans that we're working with to create these out of fine materials. So that's really where we are. And then we also anticipate, and I have to say it hasn't happened yet, but I spoke to you about this, that for some of our clients, certainly around Mayfair and the wealthier clients, that not only do they want to buy a set, but they may actually want the red room. So and I know you know people that have done this. So what we're open to doing is working with artists and designers to do potentially a build on an interior room and actually provide all the equipment and create those amazingly luxurious spaces. We are looking at doing the yacht show next year. So we don't want this to be, I'm very clear that this is a luxury brand, not a traditional
physical store
brand. Yeah. So it's one thing to go down to Soho and go amongst all the DVDs and the lighting and the
which is fun. Toys. It has its place.
It has its place. It's just not us.
Yes.
What we want to do is take people that don't want to go into those places, want to have a professional service, and we'll do that. So that's the first part. That's the sort of high-end private consultations. They can be booked on the website. But the second thing that probably is a bit more exciting is we do group consultations. So what a group consultation looks like is we will have performers and a dinner and an evening. So you will come into an event space. There may be 30 to 80 people, and you'll pay to be there, and you will watch a narrative performance occurring as a descent happens into a fantasy world of BDSM. And so through our performers and through food and through sensory elements, we put you on a journey where if you don't know anything about BDSM, you follow our characters through a story through the evening as they move into an erotic, delightful fantasy world. And then the performers themselves will come to the tables and talk with you again about what you've seen and help you curate your own collections, talk through the items and explain it to you.
I mean, this sounds like a much better shopping experience.
Yeah,
than
right.
Pretty much any shopping. I mean, like, isn't that how all shopping should be?
Food, cocktails,
yeah, and sex
and gifts. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm in.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will be talking to you more.
You're signed up whether you like it or not.
So we've done a couple of these events with partners so far. We actually just did one on Friday, which was the launch of the new showroom, which was fantastic with Zara DeRose, a great friend. She put a brilliant event on there, and we had DJs, and we had about 80 people, and we launched the showroom. But what we'll be doing is these will be much more tailored around, okay, you want to invest. You want to build a collection for yourselves. It doesn't have to be very expensive. It could be just a few £100. It could be a few £1,000. But you want to come and experience it with a partner so that both of you have the same level of learning. Because one of the things I've also discovered...
I'm buying.
One partner that knows about it and one that doesn't, right?
Yes.
And it can be uncomfortable talking about your sexual needs or your kinks. And so what we'll be doing is through performance, we're opening the conversation that then you can have at the table later.
I mean, that's really interesting that you sort of point out that very fact is, that's a lot of the time when I'm working with couples and teaching people, it's often to try and get them to be on the same level, so sometimes we will have people, I'll have people who come in to see me and they will have been maybe a man who's wanting to be in a submissive space, and he's fantasized this about this a lot, and then he wants his partner to be dominant, and she doesn't know where to start because it's just not something that she's ever done. And so then you get, somebody sort of trying to give you directions while you're in the middle of doing something, and everybody feels awkward and nobody really gets what they want. And so I'm always trying to work out ways like, how can I help your partner be confident, and then you actually get the thing that you desire? And something that you sort of touched on earlier, I think, about masculinity and feeling confident. I think this is something really interesting to the Book of Man in general, about what is masculinity? How are men supposed to embody this? And I think we're in a time where, a lot of men are quite confused about how is it that they're supposed to, be taking charge, but not taking charge too much. And, and there's and I think for young men and young boys, this is really confusing, and they're terrified that they're just going to make a mistake all the time. And I think that there's a lot within the kink space that could help educate. I'm not sort of saying that we're trying to turn everybody into wanting to wear, bondage hoods and sequins. Exactly. That's what happens in BDSM. You wear sequins and lace. But that you don't have to be on a lead or collar. But there's a lot about the communication skills that people in kink have that most people do not have in their regular sex lives. And so if there's one thing that I could spread around, and because for me, I'm quite happy with vanilla sex as well. I don't need to do kinky stuff all the time. Sure. I'm very, very open. I'm just open to just whatever, and that feels good and that makes both people feel good. But the thing that I take forward through every sexual relationship that I have is clear communication, talking about my desires, finding ways to talk about my desires so that that person really understands me, whether it's through written word, voice notes, text messages, leaving erotic literature out. There's so many ways that you can express this to another person.
And you're brilliant. You're brilliant at that. I've seen you. I've seen the way you get couples in your workshops to communicate with each other, and you've got your games to play and communication. And you're so right. At the heart of all this is communication. And
Absolutely.
At the heart of this is people coming together and like you say, vulnerably sharing themselves. And one of the things that I think I'm very passionate about, again, working with the Book of Man have asked me to do a series, which I'm really excited about.
You'd be really brilliant.
About, as you rightly said, in a confusing world where masculinity is almost synonymous with the patriarchy.
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't even dare put your head across the parapet and say, I'm a male, let alone I like to dominate women. And, that's like, we're in a whole world of wrong here.
And a lot of people are very angry about, people taking ownership of that. And
rightly. And I've got to say, it's a slight tangent here, but I was absolutely horrified in my relationship since I was in the church, really with my relationships, but in romantic and casual relationships I'd had as well. Almost exclusively, every single woman I'd met had a horror story to tell me about the way they were treated by a man. No, as much as I've tried to defend men and say, look, it's not about patriarchy, it's about hierarchy, it's about power. No, the truth is and women can be abusive too, let's be honest.
Of course,
but the truth is, on the bell curve of distribution, the majority is male ignorance, arrogance, or whatever it is, badness, whatever you want to label it as.
Is actually what I would normally call it.
Insecurity, fair. But one thing I think other men can do is act in a way that we've sort of lost tribally, is to be able to communicate to younger men what it means to communicate, what it means to be decent, what it means to look after a woman, what abuse is or isn't. And I'm not saying about the traditional male-female roles. It could be, here I am wearing sequins and a see-through shirt, right? And I'm straight, It's like
so you can be anything you want.
It can be what I want, exactly.
Yeah.
It's to be able to give that freedom. And you're right, it's actually been locked up, so much of the truth within the kink community. And yet it's gone down, or it's been positioned as something that's, dark web, aggressive, pornographic, seedy, abusive. And actually, I feel that the mission that I feel I'm on with Marquis de Mayfair is not only to make this mainstream luxury and to talk about these things, but actually at the same time, bring the language around what it means to be honest communicators, how to be a decent human being to each other, and particularly with a focus on men, on young men, on how to treat, I'm going to say, women or their partners.
Your partner.
Respectfully and properly. Because half of this stuff is they just don't bloody know. They don't
Yeah.
know what happens when they're feeling insecure or when they've been put down or when they're frustrated at work, and they're exploding their emotions in ways that are just, caveman-like, because there hasn't been a level of emotional, dissection, of awareness, and of looking at themselves and having a safe space to do that. So even though I don't want to
Absolutely.
get lectury, I feel that
No,
there's
this is a great,
mission
this,
in
as
this.
the pastor to
Yeah,
master,
exactly. There you
this is
go.
your sermon. I love it. It's fantastic. And you know what? We're on you and I are on the same mission. And it's, I think it's just one of those things that communication is the key. And I love men. I love men. I worked years as a stripper. If I didn't love men, I wouldn't have had a very good time there. And I loved it. I think they're wonderful, fabulous. So this idea of going like us and them, being against, hey, and I'm able to do things that you can't do. You're able to do things that I can't do. Well, let's all just like join up forces a little bit here. But having somebody to explain to young men, like, this is how you care for somebody. This is how you find out what somebody wants, and it's so important and it's so needed. I hate the idea of people having, younger generations, they talk about them not having sex or, being too frightened to have sex. And it's like, that's terrible. We need to fix
Really
this.
bad.
So,
Yeah, it's the best
you
thing
and I are
ever.
going to fix this. We're going to fix this shit.
Sexual revolution. I completely agree. And you said it. You said it earlier. Ultimately, this. That we're talking about King, but ultimately we are talking about love, right? We
Yeah.
are talking about the ability to love ourselves, to love the people around us, and potentially, that partner. And so when you are, repressed or suppressed sexually or even emotionally, it's very difficult to love. And to go back to the the biblical kind of stuff, love is the ultimate goal. I feel, at least it covers a lot.
Love
of
is the drug,
without being
as Roxy Music says.
yeah, it's so much better if we did more of it. And so I feel like I have a vehicle through this business, through the events, through the location, through the media, to be able to start talking intelligently with nuance about how to do this. And ultimately, I'm in a fantastic relationship with S9 right now. It feels like what seems to be you're drawn together because you have a need, because there is something, you have the darkness inside you, which some of us are born with, and it comes out very early. To be around somebody where you can express that with them, and then let the other wonderful things that happen in relationships, like love, like service, like providing a safe home and a wonderful environment, is magical. And so, there's a side story. It's coming up to Christmas right now, and S9 is of German origin. So we were celebrating St. Nicholas Day today, St. Niklaus,
Of course.
which I've
I
never
love
done.
it.
So I
Good.
walked into the lounge this morning, and I had 2 boots filled with chocolate and backlit that obviously Santa had brought me, and St. Niklaus had brought me last night.
Nicholas. Yes,
But
exactly.
we had to walk past a gynecological chair and all the kink stuff that we had yesterday. And I'm looking at my life and going, I've just got this sweetest little moment of like relationship happiness. And we're walking through a centerpiece, which is what we were up to last night, with a load of kink and a load of play. And I thought, what a great relationship.
You've cracked it. You've figured it out.
Yeah. Sex is not hidden or something that you have to try and coerce out of your partner on a date night or on a Wednesday. It can be the centerpiece of your relationship without making everything dirty and seedy, And
Absolutely. And I would love for us to get away from as well this sort of Christian kind of perspective of men. Women must hold their virginity. They hold their sexuality away. It's like, why? I want to come. I want to have a good time. What am I going to do that for? That seems like a terrible idea. There's like better ways to have an argument with somebody. And so kind of like getting on this thing that like your sexuality is something that is not something to withhold or get. It's something to pleasure, treasure, and uplift. Yes. And, you can do that by yourself, and you can do that with a partner. Or partners, however you want to do that. So, I feel like this is the big goal, is to get, things from maybe subcultures, which I can't even call kink a subculture now. It's across the world. People participate. Most people are kinky and don't even realize it. But, putting these ideas out to the world just to open people's minds to possibility, even if you never do the thing, but you just think about it or you just talk about it, that is enough. That's something to do. So, it's been so amazing talking to you today. So what's next for the Marquis de Mayfair? You've got your yacht show. What's happening? Fill us in. How can we find you? What are we going to...
World tour.
So
So we have and lots. So let me briefly say. So
tell me.
Our new showroom that we've just launched on Piccadilly. So we'll be putting a
Fabulous.
series of events that will be posted on our website, marquisdemayfair.com.
You will be in our show notes, so don't worry.
Particularly. So they'll be able to come to these events, which, as I described earlier, will be these immersive shopping experiences. So one part entertainment, one part product, and another part having fun and connecting with people. And then what we're going to do is through my business partners. So I have two business partners in this. One is Faye Satori, who's a fantastic consultant. She's worked in luxury brands for 20 years. So she's keeping us in the luxury space. And Aaron, as I mentioned, who has this network of places, has already earmarked for us a new site in London with an incredible name associated with it, which I can't share right now. But
you have to come back and break the news.
Incredible, which we're hoping will be a residency happening there. Then we have a space in New York, which I talked to you about, one in LA and in Ibiza. So what we're going to do is we're building like a display pop-up with all the best items with QR codes that we can place into these concessions in essence. And then once we've got the model right from the immersive shopping experience, we'll take that on the road next year. So New York, LA, Ibiza, watch out.
I've got some ideas for you on this as well. As you're saying, my brain's percolating. I'm like, I think I've got your model.
Well, we've had a number of copies together now, and you're beautiful copies. Let's do it again. And then the other thing is just working on the collection. So we launched with Upco. It's fantastic. It gave me 70 SKUs, and I have a full website with all the product on. But really, what we want to do now is want to see which are the best sellers, see what our customers are telling us, and then work with the best artisans, the best creatives to create luxury items. And I really want to be, the Rolex of BDSM. So we
love that. The Rolex of BDSM. That's your tagline right there. That's brilliant.
We want to go from the £200 to £2,000 mark, which is kind of where we're at now, up to the 20,000, the 40,000, because why would, like you said earlier, if you're investing in Rolex and you've got a Ferrari and you're going back to your penthouse, then you can't go and just, spank with something from Ann Summers. So I think there's a market there, a small market at the luxury end where we want to create products that have just never been seen before. And there is a few lingerie brands that do some very nice, cups, collars. In fact,
yes. Okay, but don't tell.
Also, it's for sample, so I can see how their packaging is. So it's
perfect. Well done. Well done. Well played. Tax write-off.
I want to build luxury items. So this is it. So basically, we're going to get it right in London, open up concessions, go on world tour, create some wonderful new items and bespoke pieces, and then get the message out there that this isn't something seedy or hidden. This is luxury. Success elevates us, and we
elevating intimacy, which is both of our taglines, which I love that, because for my kink exploration and teaching, I call it elevating intimacy, and that is exactly what you're doing. So it has been so great talking to you. I feel like we're going to have you back on to talk more about the manosphere and, positive masculinity and all the great stuff that you're doing. And I just can't wait to share all of your workshops and everything with everyone. So thank you again, Nick, and Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you so much, Sophie. You're a delight. You've been an enhancement in my life since I've been along, and thanks to the man. And look forward to writing this series in the near future.
Today's podcast has been brought to you by The Book of Man. If you love our show, please like and subscribe. If you want to go further in depth with behind the scenes, just join our Substack. All links can be found in the show notes. And I'm your host, Sophie Cohen, and I'll be seeing you next week for more Sex Confidential.